Praise the Lord, Ignited family. Many blessings to you. On behalf of Jennifer, Joshua, Judah, Abigail, and myself, and the entire Ignited Church family, we want to say happy, blessed, and awesome Thanksgiving for you and for your family. I pray it's a safe time, and I pray you have great food and great fellowship with friends and family. Today on Wednesday night, this is Kingdom Night Teaching. We're going to present to you a message by Dr. Lester Sumrall, the late great Dr. Lester Sumrall, concerning faith. It was recorded back in the early 80s, and it's going to be a great blessing to you. And I believe that the truths, the indelible truths of faith, will go deep into your heart as you hear this message. I pray it blesses you. Again, we love you guys. Have a safe time. I will see you right back here at Ignited Church on the following Sunday as we preach the gospel of Jesus Christ. Many blessings. We love you.
We need to understand things that are happening around us. God don't want us to be ignorant. I appeared in court in Chicago and had to give testimony to the judge that there was a devil. They put it in the records in their law books in Chicago. That devil does possess humans. And that human can become demonized. It's strange that in America you have to go to court to tell that, you know. But the man had killed 2 people, and he claimed he was demon-possessed. It was a very strange case. And he said he should be set free because he was demon-possessed. You heard the old slogan, "The devil made me do it." He was playing that game, but the judge was smarter. He's still in jail. Yeah. Hallelujah. Good to see you, everybody. The Lord bless you. We got back from Europe last Saturday. And we were in Germany this time. Now, I don't have, 4 or 5 hours to do this. I'd like to, but I don't quite have that long. But there are 3 prophetic spots in the world. One is Russia. Now, don't get too upset about what's happening, because this is prophetic, what's happening up there. There has to be this military power to come against Israel to fulfill Ezekiel 38 and 39. And so what's happening up there is right straight down the prophetic area. So don't get scared about it. It'll be all right. And the other is the common market. We had our big giant plane, the big Hercules, all over Europe. We were with the Kurds for 6 weeks, feeding the Kurds with that giant plane. And when we got our bills from Europe, our bills were in euro dollars. And they hadn't printed them yet. And they hadn't circulated them yet. And the euro dollar is worth $1.10 of American money. And we had to pay our bills for fuel and things like that in euro dollars. They want to get to 92 so bad they don't know what to do. And in 92, they will have the largest group of people in the history of the world who voluntarily used one currency. Dictators have made people do it, but they're going to do it voluntarily. We're coming to the time of the Antichrist very dramatically. Very dramatically. Now, I keep going back over to Europe because reading about it, hearing about it, it doesn't go deep enough inside if you're a preacher. You have to feel it. You have to get with it, So about every month we go, and sometimes twice a month, we go and preach in the different countries of Europe. And we go across the Atlantic so many times until even the stewardess says, "Glad to see you again." You say, "What do you say?" I just hate that travel. But if you're going to get to the people, you have to go. You can't get to them in a rocking chair. A rocking chair has a lot of action. It just don't go anywhere. Yeah. In Hebrews 12:1 it says, now faith is. What is faith? A better word for faith trust. I think you can understand it. We so abuse that little word faith until it's like a dish rag. It'll go anywhere. But trust. If you say, how much faith do I have? How much trust do you have? What is faith? I noticed you getting up and down here a little bit ago. And I didn't see one of you sit down slow. If that seat had been made of cardboard, you would. You see, why did I sit down hard? Because you saw the steel legs under there. And why would you sit down hard? Experience. What is faith? Experience. Yeah. Faith is experience. Faith is not magic. Faith is a life you live. And the reason so many people know so little about it, you think it's magic, and you're saying, give me faith, give me faith. God's saying, shut up, shut up. Because you don't know what you're talking about. You know. You say, Smith Wigglesworth had faith. He had a lot more than that, honey. He jumped out of bed about 7 o'clock in the morning and danced before the Lord for about 10 or 15 minutes, praising and magnifying God. You see. He didn't need an aspirin to get up and 2 to go to bed. Are you here? Yeah. Faith is a life that you live. And if you want faith to function in you, it is an act. It's not a dream, not a hope. It's an act that you perform. Faith can be so embedded inside of you until you make faith acts spontaneously. Yes. In fact, I've never seen faith that was nervous. When Paul said, settle down, everybody, have a little food, everybody's safe. They were still holding on to those deck poles. And that old ship was chugging high and low. And they didn't know whether they were going to make it or not. He was the only one that had faith. Because faith is never nervous. You don't have faith. No, you have faith. Faith revealed through your eyes, a look of faith. Unbelief has its own look. Faith is something that, the way you walk, you know, you got it or you don't have it. Unbelief and doubt and depression gets into your feet even. Much less your eyes. Causes some of you men to lose your hair. Well, now, excuse me. When I was 17 years old, as the pastor said, I left my hometown in Panama City, Florida, to go out in evangelistic work. There were 2 things I didn't like. I didn't like churches and didn't like preachers. So I stayed away from them. I went out in the country to the schoolhouse. I swept the floor with myself. I had a little handbill printed, paid for it, and delivered it free of charge to the people. And started a revival meeting. I wasn't an exhorter. I was an exhauster. It was pitiful, you know. But when I left home, I had 65 cents in the world. Did you know I didn't realize that till I counted my money after I got into the revival meeting? I said, I started up here with 65 cents. And I got some bills to pay. Got to find a way to pay those bills. Did you know that I didn't worry about my 65 cents? And you know, most people say, yeah, I want to go out in the ministry, you know. I'm waiting for God to... Honey, you're going to die where you're sitting. God does not respond. Faith is an act. It's a spontaneous act. You do it without calculating. Can I do it? Can I make it? The Lord didn't do that on this building here. He just started building the thing. Said, money, get over here in a hurry. Those new buildings that Brother Billy Joe's building up here. He didn't wait until he got all the money. He said, come on, folks, Let's walk together. And paid for it in cash. You know, that must have made the devil mad. Yeah. He don't like things like that. But faith is an act. And when it comes spontaneously, you're living in faith. Now, the devil don't want you to know that. He wants you to always say, oh, God, give me faith. You wouldn't know what it was you had it. You wouldn't know what to do with it. Because faith is a life that you live. It just flows from you. I had to be told by somebody, said, did you know you had faith? I said, do it really? I didn't know it. If you'd asked me how I was living, I could tell you that. But I didn't realize that it was a faith motivation that was inside. I preached for a whole week to those farmers. No, I wouldn't call it preaching, really. I would say to those farmers, I want you to know I don't like you. And to tell you the truth, you stink. I was born in New Orleans, where we have Madison Avenue from New York. And we know how to cook, we know how to eat, and we know how to dress. You know any of it at all. And the only reason I'm here is because I was dying of tuberculosis. And God said if I would preach, I could live. Thank you for being here. Somebody's got to help me live. God bless the farmers. Fortunately, they enjoyed that. Nobody had ever told them that before. After being there for a week, I said, now let me see. There has to be some money in this deal. When I went to church, I sat on the back seat and looked at the girls all the time, and I didn't know what went on really. So I said, now let me see, how did they do that? They did pass some plates or something around. At least on Sunday morning they did. I said, if I don't do that, I'm going to starve for sure. So after being there for a week, how many ever heard that phrase, pass the hat? Yeah, that's what we used to do. We'd borrow a hat. So I said, anybody loan me a hat? And an old farmer handed me his, that looked like the horse had bitten off about half of it on this side. And we took that old beaten down hat. We passed it around. And as soon as we got through, you know what he said? Give me my hat. As if he was going to lose something, We had an altar out in front, and I spilt the offering over onto the altar. And I counted it out loud during church. 1, 2. These were all pennies. There wasn't a single nickel in the offering. There wasn't a single dime in the offering. I was 17 years old and brokenhearted. I said, I don't believe I can live on that. Then I got mad. I said, any of you farmers got any chickens? Everybody raised a hand. I said, we'll put a coop outside, and I don't mean maybe you bring chickens tomorrow night. Brother, if you don't have $1, if you got chickens, it's all the same. I said, anybody got any pigs? Every hand went up. This was during the Depression. This is 1930. And I said, we'll have a coop on this side for pigs. I don't mean maybe. Bring pigs tomorrow night. You should have been there the next night. We couldn't have church. We had so many chickens cackling. We had so many pigs groaning. The pigs knew they were going to make a sacrifice. And the chickens knew that it was only an offering they were going to give. I gave it all to a farmer, and he took it to the market the next day, the wholesale market. Had more money than any preacher in 50 miles. Just because you're 17, you don't have to be dumb. You say, was that faith? I haven't qualified that one yet. I just know in about 6 or 7 months, I brought a brand new Ford for $485. So you don't have to be poor, even in the Depression. Everybody was saying, oh, it's a depression. But man, you're just in the wrong place. You get out in the country, where they got plenty of produce and there's no depression out there. That's just depression downtown where those poor folks live. We may all go back to the farm soon. Well, this went on for 3 years. And I had a good time. And when I was 20 years old, God told me that I had to go and preach overseas. So I said, well, all right. I don't want to. I don't like these people, much less those. I really want to go home. That's what I want to do. The Lord said, you've got to go to the mission field. So I went to San Francisco, and when I went to get on the boat, I had $12 in the world. Now, I had preached in San Francisco at Glad Tidings for 3 nights before I left the next day. And Dr. Craig had been there on the platform every night, and I'd preached. Souls got saved every night. I took the youth, he had a Bible college. I took the youth on the street for a street meeting before the service to show them how to do street meetings, because a country preacher knows how to hold street meetings. And so I listened pretty carefully to what pastors say, you know. And during those 3 nights, I noticed he never mentioned my name during the offering, and I got the idea that I wasn't going to get any. And I was right, you know. Now, he knew I was going off around the world, and he had a big church. Dr. Charles Price had been there, Amos Semple McPherson had been there, Smith Wigglesworth had been there, Howard Carter had been there. They'd all been there. It was one of the greatest churches in America at that time. And I'd preached there for 3 nights, and he didn't give me anything. But he was nice. He said, I'll take you to the boat. And I said, thank you, sir. And so he got one of his Bible school students to carry my suitcase, and he carried my briefcase, and I carried my hat and my coat. And we started down to the boat there in San Francisco. On the way down, he was a tall, stately, handsome gentleman. And he leaned over a little bit and says, Brother Sumrall, who is sending you around the world? And I said, Jesus. And his face looked as if he'd thrown ketchup at him. I could tell he got angry. He said, that's all you young people say. Jesus has nothing to do with it. Oh. Now, so I didn't get an offering, you see. He says, I can see you going to China and starving to death. And you know, I'm Irishman. And Irishmen don't know when to laugh. They just laugh anytime. And that was so funny to me, I laughed on the street. And I said, in that case, brother, would you send a little tombstone over to China? He said, I was going to do this in China. Send a little tombstone over to China and says, here lies Lester Sumrall. He starved to death trusting Jesus. He said, I won't send it. And I said, I won't need it, so it's all right. Now, that's a bad way to leave America, you know. He was 3 times my age. He was over 60. And one of the general presbyters, he asked me, he said, did you ask the brethren in Springfield about this? And I said, well, no. He says, my older brother told me to do it, and the younger brothers don't have any business messing with it, you know. Why should I talk to the younger brothers if the older brother says do it? You better just do it, you know. Well, he didn't like that either. 3 years later, when I got back, the first place I went was to a general council, and he was the first man I saw. He wrapped his arms around me, and he said, you're the nicest man in the world. He says, I'm so sorry I abused you, didn't give you any money deliberately, and spoke to you so harshly. He says, I didn't know that you were going to do what you have done. Because I had written for various magazines all over the world during that whole time that Brother Carter and I were going around the world together. And so everybody knew what was going on, because we were the only ones moving around the world at that time. And so he apologized for it. And I said, that's quite all right, because, you see, God was testing my faith. When I got to the dock, was he only shake and tremble? He was helping me shake and tremble. And say, I only got $12. My God, I can't stand a good hotel all night. I didn't think about that at all. I just knew there are millions of people out there, and I was going to go get them. And I hadn't stopped getting them yet, but I'm going after them, you see. And I knew that was the thing God had called me to do. And I went. Now, that's what you call faith. Faith is an act. You don't wait till you got the money for it. You know, faith is an act. When God says do it, how far can you trust Jesus? That is the extent of your faith. How far can you trust him? And when your trust quits, that's the end of your faith right there. You see. But let me tell you what trust will do. As you're trusting Jesus, you get, number one, you get experience. And in the experience, you get knowledge. And so people can't shake you. You have knowledge. People can't say, hey, this don't work. You got experience. When you've got the real thing called faith, nobody can shake it. It's not possible for them to shake it. Because it's so bedded on the rock of the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ. Through you know that you know, and you're sure that you're sure. Hallelujah! So we went on to Australia and got off. And the first meeting we had was in the largest church in Australia, in Brisbane. In Melbourne. And so I went down and I preached for them a whole week. Sunday through Sunday. And in those days they kept you with the saints. If you take the S off of it, you'll know what you're talking about. We lived with the saints. And we preached for a whole week. And I noticed that he never mentioned my name except to preach. Not in the offering part. And it came Sunday night. And he didn't mention my name. I got no money. Now, I had spent the little I had. And I had a meeting the next night, about 100 miles away. And I had no money to get there. Now, I cried all night. When you're 20, that's all right, you know, to cry all night. And then I told God, I think God likes this kind of language. I said, God, I want to tell you something. And this is it. I'll die in this room, but I won't leave until the tickets are brought here by you. I will not go on the street and say, ticket, ticket, ticket. Who's got a ticket? I says, I won't do that. I won't go down to the radio, to the railroad and say, anybody got my ticket? Anybody got my... I says, I'll stay in this room. If you can't supply my needs here, you couldn't out there anyway. So I stayed in that room. And the next morning, the lady of the house knocked on the door, a very gracious person, says, breakfast is ready. I said, I don't want any, thank you. And I stayed in that room with the door locked. I kept telling God, you call me to go around the world and preach. This is the first place. And just like the last place, I didn't get any money. I didn't realize it at the time like I do now. Before we got way off out there, God wanted to be sure I wouldn't turn back. That it didn't have one that would quit and go home, you see. And so I was there praying, and about an hour after that, the lady of the house knocked on the door again and said, Brother Sumrall, there's a gentleman here to see you. I said, well, tell him to come in. So I opened the door. Now let me tell you what faith is. When I got up that morning, I showered and I dressed. I packed my suitcase. I packed my briefcase, which was a big one. And I put it by the door. And I laid my coat on it and my hat on it. And I said, God, for your information, anytime you bring the tickets, I'm ready. You know what you'd have done? It would have taken you an hour after the tickets arrived. You'd have still missed the plane, the train. Are you here? You do your part first, but before God does his. And if you're not willing to do your part, God's not willing to do his part. Is that all right? Here stood this Australian big man with tears running down his face. I said, oh, dear God, I got enough trouble without you. He said, I couldn't sleep last night. Well, I says, I didn't either. What's wrong with you? He says, if God don't reveal this ring right, I won't ever have any faith. I said, I wouldn't either. What are you talking about? I thought him and his wife had a quarrel or something. He says, now, we all know that you're rich. I have more opportunities to laugh than any little man you've ever seen in your life, you know. I didn't have $1. 10,000 miles from home. And then I realized that Brother Greenwood hadn't given me any money because it got circulated that I was very rich. Now, you know, it's a great asset to you if you can look rich when you're poor. You can borrow money on your face. I bought a TV station that way. Yeah. He said, I'd like to do business with a prosperous man. And I saw him look at me up and down. I said, thank you, sir. We signed for over $1 million and I didn't have 10,000 in the world. I said, what's wrong with you, sir? He said, now we all know you're rich in our church here. Did you know when people tell me I'm rich, it makes me feel so good, I don't say anything about it. Yeah, it's a good feeling. You can't spend it, but it's a good feeling. It'll make you younger, you know. Yeah. But he said, God woke me up and said, you don't understand that this American doesn't understand our train system. Says, to go where you're going today, you have to have a reserved place on that train. It's a reserved train. You don't just go buy a ticket and get on it. And it also, besides being a reserved train, it's a reserved seat. You get seat number 12 and coach number 14. And says you have to have 2 tickets to ride that train. I said, never heard of it in my life. Don't even know what you're talking about. But he says, God told me to go and buy those tickets. That's the reason I said if this don't work, I'd never trust God again. Because we know you're rich. But you don't know our train system. And so I went and got 2 tickets. And here they are. I said, thank God. Hallelujah, the Lord God, omnipotent, reign it, you know. He grabbed my suitcase and I grabbed my briefcase, and 2 of the happiest men in the world. When we said goodbye at that train station, brother, we were flapping both wings at each other, you know. You say, why? Well, he had heard from God. I didn't have any ticket. I'd heard from God. I said, I'm not leaving this room till the tickets arrive. I'm not going outside this room. You will bring them here or I'll die here. That's what you call resolution. When you trust God like that, he turn hell over for you, you know. When you don't start saying, I'm going to give up, I'm going to quit, I'm going to go home, I'm going to get me a job and make a little money. No. You say, bring them in, bring them in. Bring it in, and I'm ready. You see. And God said, hey, I like that. That's trust. Trust me to do it. And so we had a great time in Australia. 3 months, 4 months there. Went on around to Java, had a great time in Java. Went on into Singapore. Went up to Hong Kong, and the war was on in China. And hundreds of missionaries were in Hong Kong. They had run out of the interior because of the war. And so we had a great, I guess you'd call the thing a convention. They had a big hall down on the main street there in Kowloon. And the people were there, hundreds of them. Well, Brother Carter has a gift for laying on of hands for the Holy Ghost. So he'd have his meeting over in another area, and I get people saved and healed. I'd have mine in another area. And so we were having 2 meetings a night and having a great move of God in Hong Kong. The missionary that was keeping all of us lived fairly close to the rented church building. And he lived up on the 2nd floor. They called it the 1st floor. Up on the 2nd floor, and on the big porch every night, all the missionaries would sit out there, 12, 15, 20 of them, and have a cup of tea. And you know what they talked about? Tibet. Tibet's never had a visitor to come to it. Nobody will dare go to Tibet. He says, would you 2 men go to Tibet? Brother Carter was a courageous man. He said, yes, we will go. I had 10 cents in the world. Now, Mr. Carter was an Englishman from London. And when we first met, I guess in the first hour, he was over twice my age. He said, young man, I never discuss finances. I'm a man of faith. I never discuss finances. Being an Irishman, I wanted to say, and you ain't married either. But you know, I kept quiet for the time being. He said, as long as we're together, we preach together, you get half the offering, I get half. If an occasion comes and you can't buy your own ticket, you stay till you can, and I'll go. Or if you can buy your ticket to the next place and I can't, I'll stay, and I'll meet you back over there when I get it. So we were two separate entities, and no communist pocketbook, or socialist either. And being older, he got along a little better. I figured. I never did find out because we didn't discuss it. But there in Hong Kong, he said, we're going to Tibet. And I said, yeah. Where are you going? I couldn't mail a letter. I only had 10 cents. I couldn't ride the streetcar downtown and back. I didn't have anything. And the devil says, you're not going to Tibet. You're going to stay right here. Well, I said, no. The missionary said that nobody's going to Tibet and preach. We're going to go. He says, well, you can't go. You only got 10 cents. Now, if you've got 10 cents, you're not broke. You're bent. But you're not broke. And I kept that 10 cents right in my front pocket so I could feel it. It's nice to feel it, you know. I kept looking in the mail every day for something from America. God never helps you the way you want him to. It happens to be his business and not yours. If you're going to say, oh, this one's going to give me money, that'll be the last one to ever give you anything. You have to let God do what he wants to do. Well, I began to, that was my first time in the Orient. I was 21 years old now. And I had to get the people saved and then pray for the sick. And in both cases, all the Chinese looked alike. Now, you see, this was 34 and 35, 1935. And they all wore the same kind of clothes. They weren't colorful in those days. Their hair was all black, eyes all black. And most of the women look exactly alike. And after I'd prayed for about 2 hours, I said, it seems to me like you folks are making a circle. And I've already been around 2 or 3 times because I couldn't tell the difference in them. Brother Carter was getting hundreds of people through to the Holy Ghost and missionaries through to the gifts to where they could lay hands on others and they'd receive the gifts of speaking in tongues in the services and interpreting tongues and prophesying. We were having a great time, except every night that bunch of missionaries talked about Tibet, and Brother Carter was hip, you know. Yeah, we're going to Tibet. Yes, we are. And poor little me said, yeah. The devil said, how are you going to go? You'd only have a dime. How are you going to go? One night, a Chinese lady broke the line. We were praying for the sick. She broke the line, came up. She had a servant that had 3 boxes of canned California fruit. You know, those have about 12, 14 cans in a case, you know, a wooden case. And she had 3 of those. In those days, it was worth a fortune, you know. They came from California. And this lady said, I want to give you some fruit for Tibet. And I could hear the devil roar with laughter. So the servant set it down on the side of the platform, and I looked at it, and the devil would laugh again. He said, you're going to eat that fruit in Hong Kong. Said, that fruit's not going to Tibet. You don't have any money to go to Tibet on. You're going to eat that fruit in Hong Kong. And I said, no. If you can't be positive, neither can God. You got to remember that. I said, no, I'm going to eat that fruit in Tibet. So I took those 3 wooden cases over to my room, and I stuck them in the room, a very small room, and there they were by my bed. And the devil seemed to laugh all night about it. Fruit for Tibet, eaten in Hong Kong. And I said, no, I'm going to Tibet. He says, you can't go on a dime. You can't get downtown. You can't buy a ticket on the ship that goes across to Hanoi and Haiphong. That little French railroad that goes up through the backside of Indochina, which is now Vietnam, that goes back into Yunnan province in the backside of China. It cost a lot of money to ride it. And you don't have any. And I didn't know anything about it. I said, yeah. A few nights later, that same little woman broke the line again. She says, may I talk to you a moment? And I said, yes. She says, I'm the one who brought the fruit. Yeah? Thank you, thank you. So we're in my room. She said, my husband is a general in Chiang Kai-shek's army. He says, we're very wealthy people. He sent me down to the British hospital here to get an operation for cancer in my belly. And said, I came and they x-rayed me. Said, you're eaten up with cancer. Says, we may operate, we don't know, but you have to build up some strength first. She said, the first night I got out and walked on the street, looked up and saw a sign. And the only word on it was healing. Says, I just looked at it and said, healing, healing. Heal means to get better. Healing, getting better. She had never seen anything like it in her life. It was a healing crusade. And she says, I'll go and see what this is about. And she was one of those little women that made the circle 2 or 3 times every night. She said, the next day I went back to the hospital and I said, I want you to x-ray me, please. She says, compare it to yesterday's x-ray. And says they did, and the doctors came back in with funniest looking faces. They said, are you the same woman as you yesterday? Yeah, I'm the same one. Says, that cancer's gone.
Glory to God.
Says, it was all over your belly, inside. It's not there anymore. She said, you sure? Says, well, there's the x-rays if you can read them. Says, I came back that night, but I didn't tell you. I just got in the healing line again to get healed. Says, the next day I went back to the hospital, and I said, more x-rays, please. And if you got money, they'll make x-rays for you. And so she had another x-ray made. The doctor says, see, you had cancer, you don't, and you don't. Says, are you satisfied now? She came back for prayer the next night to be healed. I asked one woman, I said, woman, didn't I see you here last night getting prayed for? Yeah. Well, did you get healed? Yeah. I said, what you doing up here tonight? Well, I heard you were going to Tibet. And says, I might get sick while you're gone. And I'll get this one, and I'll use it while you're gone. I said, I knew you Chinese were the smartest people in the world. I knew that. So she went four times and got x-rayed. Finally, the doctor said, don't come back here anymore. Says, we'll put these x-rays in big containers and you can take them back to your husband and he can call in a doctor. You'll see that the thing is gone, that you don't. And they said, you don't have any pain? You don't use any medicine? No pain and no medicine. Says, well, you don't have any. Says, we don't know what happened, but we just know that you don't have cancer. And so she said, I was praying, and the Lord said, no, you've been blessed by this young American. Says, you need to give him the money that you would give to the doctor and to the hospital. So she said, that seems fair. I'll do that, Lord. And he said, I brought you the money. And it was in one of these little envelopes, bank envelopes, you know, the little brown ones, you know, not quite white as a regular envelope and go up and down that way. And she handed it to me, and I said, thank you, madam. You know, evangelists are kind of fast moving. I just jammed it in my pocket and kept praying for the sick, you know. So we went ahead and prayed for the sick another hour or two. And then we went over and on that porch where it was real hot, on that porch, and all the missionaries talked again. Tibet, so beautiful. Butterflies, that wide. Beautiful flowers growing in the trees. It's so wonderful. It's so, no place on earth is so beautiful as those snow-capped mountains. And Brother Carr said, yeah. and I had to stay quiet because I had a dime. And so we had tea and we went in. I went into my bedroom, took off my clothes and put on my pajamas and laid down to bed. And God said, you didn't look at that envelope. And I said, no, I didn't. I said, 100 Hong Kong dollars is not going to help me any. And so I said, just excuse me, I'm going to sleep. I turned over and God said, you got a brown envelope there in your pocket. I said, I'll look at it tomorrow. I don't like to worry all night because I don't have enough. Turned over to go to sleep. The Lord said, you got an envelope in your pocket. And I said, well, if it'll please you, I'll get up then. So I got up and turned on the light, went over to the Schifferobe. It's kind of an old-fashioned place. Schifferobe, and reached in and I found that envelope. I said, I'll open it. So I tore it open. You know what it was? It was a $100 bill, American.
All right.
Did you know I had never had one in my life? Brother, in the 1930s, nobody but the banks And the mafia had $100 bills. Yeah. $1 bills is what went to church. $5 bills went to the grocery store. $10 bills went to the bank for your savings. That's about as high as anybody got. That was money. You could live all day long and eat all day long on $1 in those days. Of course, you didn't make much money either. But there was $100 bill. Whew. I didn't know what to do. I'd never had one. I'd always used 5s and 10s and 20s, but I had never had one of those. So I reached in to take everything out. They were all $100 bills. They had never been used by the public yet. Did you ever smell? Did you ever smell new money? Smells good, don't it? It's just rotten money that rotten people have used too many times, and the beer goozlers that don't smell good. I said, how many ever flip money? Yeah, I flipped it. Then I said, I better count it. There were 31 $100 bills. I never had so much money in my life, you know. $3,100 and $100 bills. I got ecstatic. I didn't know her name. I couldn't pronounce her name. She was now gone back to her husband, who was a general in the army. And I had fruit for Tibet and money to prove it. Now, there's only one sad thing. The next morning, when we went down to breakfast, I had a little envelope by my plate, and I kept... I wanted to talk so bad, I didn't know what to do. But we were under covenant not to discuss money. I wanted to share it. I wanted to say 15 for you and 16 for me. Well, being older, he should get the 16. But we had a covenant that we couldn't talk about money. So I spoke up and I said, I'm going down to buy my ticket today. I don't know whether Brother Carter's ready for his or not, but I'm going down to buy my ticket today. And all those missionaries looked at one another. I was just a kid. I was the youngest one present, you know. We hadn't gotten any offering yet from the local church, which would be dividing. Sure enough, I went on down. I bought my ticket across the Gulf of Tonkin into what you call, well, it was French Indochina that day. You call it Vietnam today. I bought my ticket on that little narrow gauge rail that went 3 days' journey back into the mountains, terrible mountains, into southwest China. And I went to get one of those things cashed, one of those $100 bills. Well, $1 American was 2,500 of theirs. So when I went to the bank, I took a big suitcase with me. Empty. Cash $100 and needed help. I couldn't get it all in the suitcase, and finally, and it was real money. Real money. You say, did you live all through China on that? All through Tibet? No, honey. I lived through Russia, Siberia, Japan, Korea, and Poland before that money ever got used up. It was good money. When you only have a dime and you got Jesus, you got it made. God was training me to be a person of faith. And you know what I desire with all my heart? That when I die, if I die, it looks kind of, may not happen, you know. I've been here so many generations already. That if I die, I want them to put a little tombstone. And I don't want them to mention that I was a pastor. And I don't want them to mention that I was a missionary. And I don't want them to mention that I was an author that wrote books. And I don't want them to mention that I was, you know, a missionary of any kind. I didn't want them to mention anything about television stations. I only want them to put one little line on there. here lies Lester Sumrall, a man of faith. That's all I want. I'll be quite satisfied. A man of faith. How did it come? It grew like a godly vine. Yours will grow. You know why yours don't grow? You won't work it. You got to keep replanting that seed, you know. And if you don't work it, it won't grow. We own 10 TV stations. 9 of them on the air, and the one over in Oklahoma City will be on the air shortly from now. And God gave them to us, you see. But we had to take them by faith. We didn't have money. We just had to say, hey, I believe. I believe. And that first TV station that I bought, I signed my name to it. And the man we bought it from says, oh, I'd love to do business with prosperous people like you. I said, thank you, sir. Thank you. It wasn't 3 weeks before a man in Oregon sent me a check for $125,000. I didn't know him. Never did know him. He just in a meeting like this. Another man, another doctor. Thank God for the doctors. I wish the lawyers would catch on. Another doctor gave me $65,000. And I said, hey, Lord, this is great. The Lord said, no, this is great. You signed your name and my name. I said, I've never gotten money like this before. He said, you never bought a TV station before. Until you're doing more, you don't get more. God's not a waster, you see. And God wants to, I believe, God wants to bless all of us. Amen. My wife and I came home from the Philippines. We didn't have a folding chair. We came home in our suitcases. All the work of a lifetime. We'd given it away to others. Churches we built and let the people own them themselves. We didn't have a thing. God says, I'll bless you. And if I were to go through that, you'd be amazed at what he did. And we just walked along in faith. And he did it. But the Lord spoke to me one day and he said, you know, you got this thing just a little backwards. And I said, I thought it was pretty good. He said, no. He says, my word says give, and it should be given unto you. He says, you've been in the baby class all this time. Gimme, 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 gimme. He says, now the richest gifts come when you plant and give. And then I give you more than you planted. Well, I've never had anybody talk like that. Brother Hagin was still a little boy in Texas. He hadn't gotten going with it yet. I didn't know anything about anything like that. And you know what? You say, how did this thing get started then? Well, I was crossing the country from Chicago and going through Minneapolis, going up into the northwest of our country. And in Minneapolis, I was preaching in Bible schools. I love Bible schools. And I was preaching in the Bible school there, North Central Bible College, and for 2 or 3 days. And I was to go out for lunch with the president, you know. And it was noontime, and I heard him scream at somebody. He said, send them home, send them home. And I'm inquisitive. I said, who are you going to send home? Brother Lindquist says, I got 6 young men here, and they're not paying their bill. Don't look to me like they're trying, and I'm sending them home. And I said, you can't do that. They might even backslide and go to hell because you sent them home. So that's for sure. They'll be ashamed. They get home, they can't hold up their head. They failed. You sent them home. He didn't pay any attention to me. So I walked into the room where the secretary usually was. She was out to lunch. And I said, God, can't you supply the need for these 6 young men? God said, sure I can. Well, I said, let's do it. He says, fine. Get your pocketbook out. I said, that brand new car of yours parked out in front of the school, take the title deed, sign your name over to this school, and give them the car. before lunch. You get behind me, Satan. That car didn't have 3,000 miles on it. I didn't want to give it up. God says, well, you prayed for me to supply their needs. And it says, you can do it. Give them the car. So I got my ownership title out. And I signed it over to the school. Walked in there. Says, here's a new car out in front. It's a pretty color. It's bright red. I don't like dull colors. And I said, God told me to give it. You sell it, pay their way through school, but don't ever tell them who did it, because it sure wasn't me. I wanted to keep that car. So he accepted it very joyfully and went ahead and sold the car and paid 6 young men through Bible college. But I got on that old Great Northern Express train the next morning. Remember those old engines, you know? They were so big. And when I got on it and sat down in the 3rd class, I heard them start it. Chook, 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 chook. And it didn't chook, chook. It said, you're a fool, you're a fool, you're a fool. I said, oh. I said, no, I'm not a fool. And I wish they could have started it with one chug, but they never could do it. So he said, chug, 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 chug. And the devil was saying, you're a fool, you're a fool, you're a fool. And I said, no. I went on out west and then went into Alaska and raised up 3 churches. And they're still the 3 best churches in Alaska. In Ketchikan and Anchorage and in, what's the town up above there? Fairbanks. And so stayed up there, went up in September and stayed all through the winter months until the next spring and had a great time preaching. Came back and the war was on. There wasn't a single company in America making a car. Not one. They were all making tanks, machine guns. There were no cars except second-hand ones. And they were very expensive because there were no cars being made. So I preached along until I got over to Detroit, and Von Bowman, a very close friend of mine, pastored there. And so I stayed at his home. And he said, how you doing, Lester? And I said, doing fine. Just came back out of Alaska, had a good time. He says, doing all right? And I said, oh, yeah, doing all right. I didn't even tell him about the car. And I said, Mr. Gooch over here at American Motors is a friend of mine. He's a Baptist, but he likes to hear me preach on prophecy. And I just came out of Germany and Russia, so let me get a hold of him. So he called over there for Gooch, and I talked to him, says, you got any cars? Oh, he says, no, we're making tanks over here. And says, you mean you don't have any at all? And he says, well, out on the yard out there, where they usually have, 10 or 15,000, he says there are 200 or 300 sitting out there, smut on them so deep like that because of the filth around this factory here. And he says, do you have a car? And I said, no, I don't have a car, no. He said, let me talk to Bowman. So he talked to the pastor, and the pastor hung up the phone and said, let's ride over and see Gooch. Well, it's the middle of the afternoon. I said, well, all right. So we got in his car, and he lived on the 5-mile road there in Detroit, and the factory's over on the 8-mile road. So we went buzzing over to the 8-mile road, and he had the big steel fence open. So we drove right in, and out in the middle of that vast yard where they used to keep cars was a little glass cubicle, and this big fat man was in there, Gooch. And so I walked in. He just always loved me. Every time I'd come to Detroit, he'd come over and listen to me preach, even though he was a Baptist. And he hugged me and said, how are you getting along? I said, fine. He says, you don't have a car? And I said, I never did tell him that I'd give mine away. I said, no, I don't have a car. I just came back from Alaska. I don't have a car. And he says, take this rag. And he gave me a big old dirty rag about that big. He says, go out there and smudge around, see if there's any color you might like. And I said, oh, what good would that do? Oh, he says, it won't hurt you. Go do it. So I went out there and I took that big old dirty rag and smudged around. That one was black. I said, I don't take that one, no. Another one, it was gray. Oh, no, I don't want that one. Another one, blue. I said, no. Then I came. said, my color. Yeah. It was as red as that chair. I said, that's my kind. So I rubbed it a little bit and went walking back over. And I said, yeah, there's a nice one out there, you see. And he reached up and got some keys and fiddled around. And he says, go over and bring it over to me. He said, I want to look at it. And he said, here are the keys. He says, the battery's in it. And so I went over and started the thing and drove it over to the glass cubicle. By the time I got there, he had a white sheet of paper about this long and about that deep. And it says, be sure to get a Michigan State tag license plate within 10 days. Well, I said, Bowman must have bought a car here. And I didn't know that the factory sold cars to people that were not dealers. And he went out and pasted that thing on the car. Then he fiddled around in the glove box. And he came back. He says, Sumrall, I really like you. And I said, well, thank you. Appreciate that. He says, just get that car and get out of here, would you? I said, do what? You want me to go to jail, do you? I said, I don't own any car. He said, if you look in the glove box, you do. He says, drive on out of here. Says, Bowman and I have a few things to talk about anyway. I got in a great, big, beautiful four-door car. I gave away a peanut and got a pumpkin. Yeah, you know? This big car, I took it over to a place at a filling station where they wash cars. They wouldn't take any money. They wanted to touch my red car. And everybody came around and said, woo! I said, it's mine. Yeah, it's mine. Say, they washed that thing up. I was the only person in town with a new car. And I felt so good about it. The Lord rebuked me. He says, you don't need to feel that way. Said, if you hadn't given your car to the Bible school students, I would not have given you this car. He did not do it. I did it through him. That'll sober you up, you know. And that'll teach you what faith is all about. If you plant, you receive. Now that's what Jesus said. But you know, some people won't plant. They'll even eat their own seed and not even plant it, to where you can get a harvest from the thing. And I said, isn't that something? Isn't that something? Now I began to live like that after that. That when I want something, rather than asking for it, I give something. Because I'm planting it for something bigger than I have. Don't have enough to get what I need, so I give what I got to get what I need. You see? I have a seed and I have a need. So I plant the seed to receive the need. Are you here? It works. It works, you see. Now, I wouldn't be able to have television stations today, a shortwave station that's heard all over the world, all over the face of this earth. A few days ago, we read a letter from a man in an American nuclear submarine. He said, you sure sound good down here. He said, all the men on this submarine are listening to you. I said, what a letter. And his letterhead was marked for that submarine, American submarine. And they were picking up. He said, we are in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean listening to you every day preach the gospel of Jesus. Hallelujah! But if you don't plant, you can't receive back, you see. A couple of years ago, a man walked into my office, and most of you have heard of him by now, I'm sure. And we'd been good friends together, and I'd given him quite a bit of money for his missionary work. And he said, you know, I need a truck. Would you buy it for me? Yeah, I'll buy it. Don't ask me for stuff. I don't have much brains, you know. I just give it away. I said, yeah, I'll buy you a truck. I said, how much is it? He says, it's $40,000. That's just for the pork where the engine is, you know, that's not the trailer. And so it says $40,000. And I didn't have it. You say, what in the world did you do? You already said you'd give it to him. Well, at that time we were building our church in South Bend. And I looked over and we had that amount in the building fund. And so I took all of the building fund and gave it away. How many are glad that I didn't have any deacons? They'd have said the preacher's gone crazy. Let him leave town in a hurry before we give something else away. You know? Yeah. I gave it away. And the devil tormented me. We had to slow the project down. We had to tell the men that we don't have any money for a few weeks just because we built that thing paying cash. The day we completed it, it was all paid for. And so we had to slow the progress down and because we'd given our money away. Did you know it wasn't just maybe 3 weeks or 4 weeks, the telephone rang. And the gentleman on the end says, I'm Dr. So-and-so from another city. He said, I have a love gift for you. Could I meet you at the TV station? You can always meet me at the TV station. I said, yes, sir. So I went over, and he says, the Lord has given me some money, and I watch your television station here. At that time, he wasn't Pentecostal. Says, I watch your TV. Says, I'd like to take this gift that I have and give it, part of it, to every minister on your station. He said, I just thought that would be so nice. Well, I didn't say a word. You know, best to keep your mouth shut when it's not your money. But he said, God spoke to me and said, I had to give you all of the money, and I didn't want to. I said to my wife, would you pray for 2 days and tell me what God told you? She said, yes. She prayed for 2 days and also fasted, and she came back and said, you won't like what God said. I said, what did God say? He says, God told me that you're supposed to give all of that money to Brother Sumrall, and you're not to divide it. And so now she says, we have to do it. We have the witness of 2. Well, I said, thank you. And he pulled an envelope out and says, it's in this envelope here. I said, may I pray for you? So I laid the envelope down and said, God bless this medical doctor. We're so glad he blesses so many people. And bless him and enrich him in every way that you can. And said, thank you. And he left. He and his wife left. And did you know we open those envelopes rather quickly these days? Don't we, Pastor? I opened it up. It was $150,000. And when a preacher gets a check for $150,000, you know what he does? He says, whoo, woo, 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 woo. He becomes a wild Indian. Woo, does he ever? You know, I got so happy. And God said, shut up. I said, it's a nice gift. He said, I made him do that. He didn't want to do it. He says, if you hadn't given the missionary the $40,000, I would have never have given you the $150,000. And all I could think of after that was, if you lend to if you give to the poor, that you lend to the Lord, and His interest is better than Oklahoma. I believe if God could get into our bosoms, you know, that if you plant, you get back. In fact, I have to do a little planting here tonight, if you don't mind, because I have such a big need right out there in front of me, such a colossal need, that I want to do some planting here tonight. You say, well, how do you want to plant tonight? Ever since I met your wonderful pastor, such a remarkable person he is, I wanted the whole of America to see him and hear him. His words of wisdom are so inspiring. His counsel is, I was noticing as he spoke tonight, so gracious and so kind. America, not just you bunch in Oklahoma. America needs to hear this man. Do you believe that? Well, we've talked to him for several years about this because we just feel like God wants to make him a national expression of the love and the power of God. I just believe it with all my heart, you know. I don't want to worry him too much, but every time I see him, I keep telling him the same thing. And since last year this time, through Brother Oral Roberts, he got that big, beautiful van out there, and he got this beautiful cameras that you're looking at here, and they belong to this church here. How many are glad for that? Yeah. And I told him, it's time now. It's time now. We can't wait any longer. People will go to hell. People will commit suicide. People will become devastated and lose their faith in God. And we need you, not just in one place. We need you all over this nation. And he's ready to do that. He is ready to do that. He's ready. He's been ready all the time. But the moment has come to do it now. And from all my heart, I want us to do something tonight. You say, what do you want us to do? At least from my stations that he's on, I hope he goes on all 9 of them that are on the air right now. Rod Parsley, I babied him into this television business because we worked with him when he didn't have just over 100 people. And that good preaching that he got it from me, of course. Well, me and Norval Hayes. Norval gave him the length of it, and I put the meat in it. We love each other extremely well. We were talking to each other just yesterday, and we talk together all the time, and we just love each other. He's a very, very beautiful brother, but he's making a mark in this country. Everywhere I go, they're talking about Rod Parsley today. A few years ago, they never heard his name. And if he'd have stayed in Columbus, they still wouldn't have known his name. Now, we want your pastors to be the same. And I want us to do it tonight. Our television ministry, Peter did it, I didn't do it. It had nothing to do with it. He says he'd like to pay cash for the first year. And Peter took off 1/3 of the total amount for him. And he needs about $100,000 because he don't want to go on that TV station begging. He wants to go on that TV station praising God from whom all blessings flow. I'd like to see one of the greatest planting seasons anybody ever saw tonight. And I brought my seed to plant along with me tonight. And I have 10 $100 checks here. And it's $1,000. And I want to plant that into his television ministry. And I would like for at least 100 people to get up and come down here. And let's do it together. And then let me lay hands upon you for prosperity. How many would like to have a better year than you ever had before? I'm ready for it too. The devil's had this stuff long enough. We want 100 people to come down here. And I want you to form a line from way over yonder, clear down yonder so I can get to you and pray for you. And I want you to say, I'll give $1,000. I'll plant $1,000. Get up and start coming right now from all over this building. And it's a planting season. We're going to get back 100-fold, you see. We're not going to mess around about it. Just stand right there. The ushers will come and give each one an envelope. Make out your check to this church. And if you don't have all your $1,000 tonight, put in what you do have. Would someone move this pulpit back for us, please, out of the way here? And we need every usher here, down here. That's right. We're going to pray for God to prosper you. We're going to pray for God to help your planting. And so We want 100 people to get up and come on down here. And we want him to go on. He'll be the first one that I ever heard of that went on television with a year paid in advance. Never heard of it. But it's time he did hear of it. And we want to see it tonight. Come on, get up. Now, you say, Brother Sumrall, I don't have that money. I know you don't. You never will have any more if you don't get busy and start doing something for God. You have to plan, you see. God started this gimme business. He wants you to start planning. That's what the Bible says. Jesus said it. Give, and it shall be given unto you. And if you give, it will be given unto you. Now, I've tried it, and I've tested it, and I know it. In Jesus' name. In Jesus' name. Shila Baha Shaka Babahaya. We're going to tell that poverty devil to get out of your way. Yeah. Now, I want you to know something. When I came back from the mission field, I did not have a thing in the world. And God began to bless us. God began to bless us. God began to bless us, you know. And it was because we had learned how to plant in Jesus. Glory to God. I like to see the devil beaten down. Hallelujah. Well, hallelujah. We need just a few more. They're coming. Hallelujah. Oh, the devil don't like this, but God's going to bless you. God's going to bless you. Okay. Now, anybody that... have you taken up the offering back here yet, ushers?
Go ahead, ushers. Receive the offering.
Yeah. We want you to bring it up so we can lay our hands on it and bless it. All right. I think we're going to pray for these first, and then you'll have that by then. Let's get it all together. Brother, you come over here. That's all right. Pastor, let's lay hands on it. Ha. Give the heavens a loud noise. Let them hear the word of the Almighty God. Give the winds a mighty voice. Let them hear the word of God. We bless these that plant in the best soil there is, and the sinners that are out there that don't know God, those that are brokenhearted and broken homes. Lord, we're going to penetrate. We're going to go in there. We're going to preach the truth to them. Bless them, Lord. Bless them, Lord. In Jesus' name, we command you to be blessed. To be blessed. In Jesus' name. In Jesus' name. Oh, Kalabashia. Let's raise our hands and praise the Lord. In Jesus' name. Yeah, Kababahashia. Well, hallelujah. Glory to God. Glory to God. Glory to God. Praise God. Okay. As soon as we take it. Praise God. There has never been one who came up with less when he gave to me, saith the Lord. Because I am a multiplier, and I will multiply blessings upon your lives. And even if you do not know me this night, as you give unto me, I take attention to it like I did the Roman in the Bible. I heard him when he didn't know who I was. So therefore, if you will give, you will find that I'm watching and caring for you. God, we want you to bless every person in this room tonight. We believe for that. We believe for that. Hallelujah. And these that we're going to lay hands upon, Lord, we want the rest of this year to be the best they've ever had in their lives. We want all of earth and heaven to burst forth, and they will have joy, they will have peace, and they will have plenty. Now, Lord, bless them, bless them, bless them, bless them. In Jesus' name. Glory to God. Glory.